For more on this and much more, we're joined by Florida Congresswoman and member of the House Oversight Committee, Paulina Luna. Congresswoman, thanks for sticking with us here. I hope that you got a chance to see President Trump answering questions in real time there while you're waiting to join us. First, right off the top, I think probably the most, one of the largest of many topics he covered was this idea of Republicans may have an answer for health care. We all remember seeing John McCain put a thumbs down to repeal and replace, and most Americans knew there wasn't really a replace bill sitting there. And some folks got scared to include his constituents in Arizona. Where are you on this idea that Republicans can bring forth the plan? President Trump says put money in the pockets of Americans, let them decide. And also this pivot to say it's the health care insurance companies that may be the culprit here.
I fully agree with him. In fact, I can tell you that I don't take any pharmaceutical money, and I'm very selective about the special interest money that my campaign accepts for these reasons. And so there is something called the healthcare insurance cartel, as well as the pharmaceutical cartels. And part of the reason why this hasn't been reformed over so many years is because of the fact that a majority of Congress is bought and paid for. So I think the president's perspective is brilliant. I think what Senator Scott said was key, in that I think it'll actually help diversify and actually make those health insurances cheaper. And so I'm here for it.
Congresswoman, you introduced a resolution earlier this year to advance the End Congressional Stock Trading Act. And this Wednesday, the House is going to hold a hearing on whether members of Congress should be allowed to trade stocks. Congresswoman, what do you expect we're going to hear on Wednesday?
Well, look, I can tell you that a majority of Americans, both Democrat, Republican, and Independent, do not support members of Congress being able to individually stock trade because of people like Nancy Pelosi, who made 17,000% returns on her investments. And on average, for members that do engage in stock trading, the average return is 600%. So I tell my colleagues, if you want to stock trade, go to Wall Street. But I think the hearing is going to repeat what we already know, and that there's a problem with it. Even the Speaker of the House will tell you that certain members have taken advantage and that there's insider trading and information. So proud to report the president has already made public statements that he supports banning the insider trading that currently happens in the House. I hope to do it. Now, obviously, I'm sure you can imagine it's made me wildly unpopular among my colleagues, but popular among the American people, which is what counts.
Definitely what counts. Congresswoman, I want to turn now to those pesky Epstein files. On Tuesday, the House will vote on whether to release the files. And despite not caring for years, Democrats claim they're leading this effort because they think they can use it to attack Trump. Congresswoman, how do you plan to vote this Tuesday, and what's your overall take on all of this?
You know, Tommy, I'm actually really happy that you pointed it out that Democrats are using this to attack Trump. And so my position hasn't changed. I will be voting for it. But to be clear, I think that the American people understand that right now, everything that the Democrats have tried to say that, you know, Trump was somehow implicated is completely false. And what's been interesting about this whole investigation is, you know, President Trump came out and said that he's going to have the DOJ look into Reid Hoffman, Bill Clinton, and a number of other people. But again, this has been a smear campaign in an attempt to smear him, his family, and anyone associated. And so I will say that hopefully after this, the Democrat Party will be able to move on, maybe to focus on issues that are benefiting the American people. But ultimately, you know, I was in the investigation rooms when the Speaker was there, when House Democrats were there, and the victims themselves said that President Trump was not in those files. And they also moved forward to say that they would provide us with the list. But I would like to update the American people. I actually reached out last week to House Oversight, and I said, have the victims provided a list of names yet? And they said no. And so ultimately, we're still waiting on that from the victims. Hopefully we'll get to something soon.
Congresswoman, I want to turn to a different topic, a kind of lighter topic. You chair the House Task Force on Declassification of Federal Secrets, and we're featured I have a new documentary focused on the cover-up of UFOs. The movie's director joined Fox last week. Here, watch this.
For a very long time, the public, Congress, and even the president have been kept out of the loop on this subject. In the last few years, senior members of Congress, senior members of the administration, thanks to whistleblowers, have found out what's been going on. And they are now in pursuit of the truth for themselves and for the American people.
Congresswoman, is the government covering up alien life?
Well, it's definitely interesting that they are denying access to members of Congress that are asking the very basic questions. And why can't we see some of these classified videos and information that seem to be operating under a black congressional budget? So it's definitely made an interesting conversation and topics. But I think that everyone should tune into the documentary. I know, to my knowledge, that Secretary of State Marco Rubio is actually on there. This is one of the biggest bipartisan and bicameral investigations that we've had thus far. And I think my biggest issue is that if this is an issue of national security, you also have the appropriations aspect where you have Congress that's not being given access to money that we're spending. I think that that's a big problem. The American people should ask questions, and you shouldn't be called crazy simply because you're inquiring, right? We want to get rid of wasteful spending. Well, what the heck is the Pentagon doing? So I look forward to the documentary coming out. I think it'll change the topic of discussion on the tone on the matter.
Congresswoman, lastly, I want to ask you this a little bit more personal, but I think it's important American people want to know. Earlier this week, or I guess just maybe 48 hours ago, President Trump put out a post kind of condemning Marjorie Taylor Greene, and then he was asked about her a few minutes ago. He called her Marjorie Traitor Greene. We look back at folks like Matt Gaetz, who ostracized themselves in the halls of Congress within their own party. It seems like she's going down that same path. You are a contrarian in a lot of ways. You just said you don't get very popular when you go after people's ability to trade stocks. What is your guiding light? What is your beacon? Do you have any sort of allegiance to the Republican Party? It seems like you're not making enemies, but you're also not holding a party line for the sake of holding a party line. We can throw the Epstein files in there as other evidence of that. And is there room in Congress for even the Thomas Masseys, because President Trump took a shot at him as well, that may not have a party line but have a conviction that they want to move forward, which seems to be what you're doing?
I'd have to say that my number one, I guess, guiding light would be the Constitution, and then also my constituents. So when I made promises to run for office, I did run on ending government corruption, and so that's been a big part of my platform. But also understand that also on the back end, sometimes things aren't always as they seem, and President Trump's not stupid. And I think a lot of these topics, to include the Jeffrey Epstein topic, have been used as a means of assassinating the president's character. Remember, I was the only member of Congress earlier this year that was actually engaging the Department of Justice, wondering what was going on with this. I also put out information that we found evidence of destruction of evidence pertaining to Jeffrey Epstein under the former deputy director of the FBI, so under Biden's FBI. And no one wanted to get engaged until potentially the Democrats were trying to float the idea that President Trump was somehow implicated in all this. Well, we know now that that's false, but I do think it's important to remember that at the end of the day, this is politics, and things are not always as they seem. So I think that the truth always comes out. I can't speak for the reasoning behind, why some of my colleagues are doing what they're doing. But I can tell you that without a doubt, I've had a great conversation with the president on this. And I would not be surprised if the president says, this is literally everything they're trying to do to try to smear me, the Democrats, et cetera. So vote to release the files, because they've handed over thousands of documentation on this. And we are still conducting a parallel investigation to this. So I just hope that the American people can see through all that nonsense, because President Trump is truly doing great things for our country. And I think it's unfortunate to have him dragged into all of this.
Well, we had the Deputy Attorney General on earlier, and we got a fuller answer from you than him on the Epstein file. So we appreciate that. Thanks for your transparency and willingness to work on these hot topics. All right, Congresswoman Paulina Luna, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.